Hi everyone, this is Brandy Owens and I completed my Level 3 task on the topic of coding. I chose this topic because I attended the Digital Learning Conference as part of my Level 2 task and I wanted to learn more about how I could use coding at my school to teach my students and improve their learning. I introduced coding to my students as soon as I got back from the Digital Learning Conference and I talked to them about how they're the future and that future jobs will require them to create and build technology. I talked to them about how they may choose a career in game design or robotics or even instructional design, but that in all of these fields they will be required to possess problem solving skills and creativity, and I feel that coding can help build these skills. As part of my research for this project, I looked at an article about Minecraft and how a school used this as part of gaming education in their art class. Some of the concepts in this article I could relate to coding in the classroom. As technology becomes more accessible to the general public, the capability becomes larger for the everyday person to become a maker rather than just a consumer of digital technology. I talked to my students about this and told them that computers and mobile devices now are no longer just devices that give you information, but they're devices that you can interact with and build things with. For example, programs for games or robotics. During this presentation, we'll look at several main ideas. We'll look at an introduction to coding from a perspective of gaming. We'll look at two different coding apps, Scratch Junior and Code.org. I will demonstrate how it can be used in the classroom, how it connects to the 4Cs, and what the limitations of coding are. We'll first look at an introduction to coding. I have two different videos, one about Scratch Junior and one about Code.org. These are both free applications that students can download and use in the classroom or at home. Both of these have been used at my school. We will first look at Scratch Junior. So you can see by this video that Scratch Junior allows students to be creative. They're using the communication piece because they're coding and they're communicating with the sprite or the game what they want it to do. And they're also using problem solving and critical thinking skills. We will now take a look at code.org. So you can see from this video, it explains a little bit about how to use the programming games in code.org, but it also speaks to coding as a form of communication again. So now I'll talk about how I use this in the classroom. I introduced my students to coding and it was a simple introduction, but after the digital learning conference, I introduced them to coding as a form of communication. We talked about how communication has evolved over time, how it has changed from being something that we do face to face with another person to something that we now do. We communicate with computers and robots through programming. We also talked about how forms of communication have changed, how we went from writing letters and sending telegraphs to sending emails and texts. I then introduced them to the code.org website and we went through a short tutorial and then I allowed them to experiment with the coding games and I found that they learned very quickly. I will now speak to how coding can enhance learning. We've already seen how coding can involve students using critical thinking and problem solving skills, how it enhances communication and collaboration. You can work in groups in Scratch to create a program or write a game, and it also fosters their creativity. From the article that I found about the school that used Minecraft in art education, it said that students learn how to create and express themselves through the computer, not just interact with it. And that kind of example gives you an idea of how it can foster the creativity. I also found a quote that says game-based learning that is collaborative in nature fits Vygotsky's constructivist learning model, where the social environment in which students learn is influential to their success. So this shows how students can be collaborative, and I've seen students use Scratch at our school in a collaborative manner. They actually worked in small groups last year, our middle school students did, to design an animated logo for our school. Coding can also foster critical thinking skills. Research has shown that when learners are left free to roam in a complex problem space, as they sometimes are in permissive hands-on environments, they tend to hit on creative solutions to complex problems. We will now take a look at how um, coding can connect to the 4Cs in a real-world example. This is an example of students at a college who are using coding to write a program for a robot that will be used in first responder emergency situations. So you can see in this video that in this particular example, coding can hit all of the 4Cs. They are working together as a group. They're using their critical thinking skills to solve a real world problem. They're using code as a form of communication, but they're also communicating amongst each other to solve the problem. Another example that was given in an article that I read was Jason Sellers, a teacher, allowed his students to build interactive fiction games through a coding program called Playfic to improve their writing skills. Something interesting that I also found was that furthermore, as many of the youth as we observed that were girls were being considering we began considering how the game might empower girls to consider careers in technology. This was written as part of the article about the school that used Minecraft in their art education class, and they observed that the girls were using Minecraft and really getting into it, and they thought that this would be a great way to introduce them to careers in technology and get them excited about it. I also observed this when I introduced my female students to coding. They seemed to pick up on it much faster and were very interested in it and really were motivated to complete the tasks. The limitations of gaming, of coding, specifically the game type code writers like on code.org, they're not content specific, so it would be hard to integrate them into the curriculum to meet a certain standard or to cover a certain topic. But I feel that Scratch could be more adaptive. I feel that you could adapt that to have the students create something content specific. So that would be one of the limitations of the more gaming type code writers like code.org. And these are my references that I used. And thank you, and I would appreciate any feedback.